would pray for Dad to come back to the church.
How can he not believe anymore? He's breaking his promise to me, to God.
I would say, please, please, please bless that Daddy will come back to the church.
What happens if I don't believe anymore? Is she still going to love me the way I am?
But now I kind of feel like me and him have a better connection now that he's not in the church.
I wish this wasn't happening.
And welcome to Unequally Yoked. With me, I'm Neil Winters.
And Naomi Winters.
And I am Ava Winters, offspring of Neil and Naomi Winters.
Woohoo! The fruit of my loins.
Indeed.
Yes, and we have multiplied and replenished the earth with great exuberance.
And yes, we do know how birth control works.
Yes. We are in the Winters Quarter studio in North Carolina. And tonight we do have a special guest, Ava. And Ava has written an essay at my request talking about what it was like for her to go to experience my disaffection. I have not read it nor seen it, so I don't know what is going to come out of her mouth.
I don't really remember what I wrote, so I'm not sure either.
Okay, so why don't you read it for us, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
But first, a little plug for Ava. She is an amazing writer and an aspiring novelist. She's written a few things. And we are going to be getting her books online. And you are going to look them up and read them because they're awesome.
And Ava is also the person who drew our cover art for our podcast.
You're just so stinking,
Thinking of drawing more things.
talented.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Exciting. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Marriage is a very interesting thing. I can't say much about it since I am an unmarried 17-year-old, but there are a few things I have been taught and observed through my own parents. For one thing, marriage isn't easy. Every couple has their own set of unique issues that they're constantly battling. My parents' battle happens to be religion. The other thing I've come to know is marriage doesn't just affect the couple. The marriage and its own uniqueness affects several people, one of them being the children. Growing up, I feel that me and my family had very similar mindsets about the world around us. God was the center. He created this earth, He gave us what we had, and if we followed His teachings, we would live with Him again someday. It was a very strange thing when my dad no longer believed it. It was strange watching God no longer be His center. It was also strange hearing such different views from a member of my family. For a while, I was angry and I couldn't believe he could believe Satan's lies. In church, they always told me you don't hate someone based on how they feel about God. I heard this, but still I think part of me had my little kid brain of there are good guys and bad guys. If you followed God, you were a good guy. If you didn't, you were bad. Now, this was a total smack in the face. My dad was and is a good guy, but he didn't believe in God. In my head, these two characteristics could not exist together, so it was a very tough process of changing my thinking. In a way, I'm grateful that my dad believes what he does. I'm not perfect, but I feel like I've become more accepting of everyone, whether God is part of their life or not. Now, the bad parts of having two parents who believe in different things depends on your beliefs. Personally, I am still fully faithful in my church, but maybe with a different perspective than most. Because of this, sometimes I feel like I'm choosing sides between my mom and my dad. Whenever I'm in church, I'm constantly wondering what argument my dad would bring up on what they're saying is not true. And because of that, I feel as though I'm betraying him somehow. Or I feel like I'm betraying my mom and religion when I talk to my dad about something that may have bugged me at church. I've noticed that there are sometimes three people in my parents' relationship. My mom, my dad, and the church. The church is like a lost puppy my mom brought home and refuses to part with. But my dad can only see how much poop the dog produces, and how many things it chews up. He hates the dog so much. Whenever we tell him something cute it did, he'll leave the room because he still sees the poop. My dad won't say much about the puppy, though, because he loves my mom and doesn't want it to ruin their relationship. But everyone knows he hates it. Sometimes I feel stuck. If I love the puppy, I'm disappointing my dad. If I hate the puppy, I break my mom's heart. Over time, I've had to learn the lesson that you can't please everybody. It took time, but I finally formulated my own opinions based on what I believe, and not my parents'. It can get confusing when your parents have two different views on something pertaining to you. Things like sex before marriage, going to church on Sunday, and even marrying young. One parent will tell you what they think, then you get a second view. Occasionally you'll hear something like, don't tell them that I told you this, but... And sometimes because of this, you have to draw boundaries. Communication and boundaries is the key to something like this. It's also an experience of learning to take what you need and believe in the conversation and then leave the rest. I've also had to come to respect that some people have different opinions than me, and it's their right to practice their beliefs. I've been very grateful that my parents both respect my beliefs and don't force anything on me. It can be really hard talking to friends of mine that are religious. My parents' situation is a very taboo thing in the church. No one really wants to talk about it, mostly because they don't understand. Sometimes I feel like they may look down on me. Like when I say I want to leave a lesson because they are talking about how important it is that both parents have God as their center. Or maybe because they were taught that they think that my family is less important. That can be a hard feeling to deal with. But it's hard talking with my friends who aren't religious, because they don't get the religious part of it. So it's really hard to find anybody who is willing to talk about it from a non-judgmental point of view, who is also an outsider from the situation. Luckily, I have someone I feel comfortable talking with, and I can always go to them. I think overall this situation is very trial and error. No one's perfect, and no one really knows the perfect way to deal with it. I think it's a very important learning experience. It's been hard and sometimes very exhausting. But it's my family, and I love them all very much. If this is the situation I'm in, I couldn't imagine it with any better people.
Very nice.
That's so sweet.
So let's talk about the dog poo.
Let's not. Let's talk about the cute little puppy.
Dog poo.
Puppy.
So that's how you feel?
Yeah, most of the time.
Most of the time.
How did you find somebody to talk to?
It was kind of hard. Like I said, it's very trial and error. You talk with some things about certain people, and they just kind of shiver away, and they're like, yeah, that really sucks, and then they change the subject.
It's too uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's too uncomfortable for them. They don't know how to make me feel better, and they kind of pity me.
Do your friends is this person you go to like a cousin?
Cousin.
Okay. How have your religious friends handled this situation?
They don't talk about it.
They don't? Mm-mm. Nobody wants to talk about it.
The ones back in Utah?
The ones back in Utah, they don't talk about it.
Really?
Yeah, like if I say something, they'll just kind of be like, yeah, that really sucks, I'm sorry, and then they'll change the subject.
Yeah, it's hard when you're not going through it. You don't know what to say.
Yeah, exactly, which I understand, but it was kind of hard when I needed someone to just listen, and they weren't really willing to do that.
Yeah.
But my cousin is really good at listening.
Yep.
And she's been my rock for a long time, so...
Aww.
Yeah, she's very good at... She'll just kind of listen with a non-judgmental point of view, and if she'll sometimes ask me, do you want me to say anything, or do you want to just leave this?
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
To be able to give the person what they need. You mentioned at church you'll feel Dad's arguments in your head, like what he would probably say when you're learning something. And you mentioned that you feel like you might be betraying him.
Yeah.
Are there other things you feel when you have those arguments going on in your head? Like, how does that affect you with your worship and the reason why you go to church? And
it can be hard because sometimes it's like I agree with him, and it's like, oh, this sucks, and like I must be a really bad worshiper. I must be a really bad person for thinking this, and then I'm like, oh, but Dad's not a bad person, so it's okay, and it's very much a very hard process, which is why I think I sometimes don't like going to church.
Yeah,
because it's exhausting going through
so
that
exhausting.
process.
That is exactly how I feel.
You go through that too, Naomi?
Oh my gosh, it's exhausting. I just want to sit there and hear a lesson and feel all warm and fuzzy and go, yeah.
The thing is, it's
really
not his
good.
fault either. It's like,
no,
it's just,
but my head is just going, oh, but he would say this, and oh, Dad would hate that, and he would hate knowing that we're learning and talking about this, and he'd probably think we were saying this, but that's not what that means.
yeah.
And all I want to do is just have these warm, fuzzy feelings and go home. And
I've made that impossible.
just another thing to be angry at you about.
And I'm not mad at him because of it.
I'm not either.
I think that, like, he actually taught me something that you shouldn't, and I've had to learn this over time. You can't just believe absolutely everything that's given to you.
yeah, don't
So I
take
feel like-
things at face value.
So, like, even at church, even though I know that most of it is true, there are some things I have to be like, do I believe this is true?
Yeah.
And I have to be like, and I question it, and
Yeah,
it's a personal revelation for me whether or not I believe it.
yeah.
So you're getting older. You're approaching Relief Society age, right?
Yeah. I actually prefer Relief Society.
Sometimes, most of the time you've been coming with me, huh?
Yeah.
Do you feel closer to Mom doing that?
Yeah, and I also, I don't know, it's more of a discussion, and I feel like I gain more from it, get more mature views on things. I don't know, I feel like in my class, they're just saying everything that I've already learned.
Right.
Ava has had a tough life, to say the least. So she has matured very quickly in a spiritual and emotional realm. And so it is sometimes difficult for her to relate to people her own age.
Yeah.
So when you get deeper into the discussion and doctrine of how you're applying it and the what ifs and the exceptions to the rule too, that's more her style.
So, I say so freaking off. Okay, so here's my question.
I have a question too.
Well, me first.
Okay.
My question is this, and you hit upon it in your memo or in your essay. One of the things that
Okay.
that
Watch your speech or mush mouthing it.
I miss maybe. So one of the things that
How much did you drink?
not too much. No, one of the things that bothers me when I think about it that you brought up in your essay is the concept of learning things about forever families or how we have righteous parents and that type of thing. I hate knowing that you guys learn about that stuff because it's even though it's not giving you the explicit message that I'm bad, it's giving you an implicit message that I'm
it was
bad.
actually a lot worse back in Utah. I do not hear that at all in this church.
What
Yeah.
here in North? What were you hearing in Utah?
Just like it's very important that you have the priesthood in your family and that they're a part of
In
your
your
life.
home.
In your home, it creates a great atmosphere, and God is able to reach us better. Which I can see where they're coming from, but honestly, I disagree.
Well, I remember we were sitting in a lesson in Utah one time, and one of the participants raised their hand and said, "I'm so grateful that in our cul-de-sac we have every person in here is a priesthood holder." And
Yeah,
do you remember that?
I remember
hated
that.
hearing that.
That was not cool.
I was livid. It's like, wait a minute.
They're good people wherever you go.
I almost walked out on several lessons when the girls would raise their hand and be like, "I'm so grateful that my dad is a priesthood holder," and I felt like they were rubbing it in my face, and I didn't think that was fair because I don't think you're less of a person because you don't hold the priesthood, and that's kind of the message that I was getting, and I really hated that.
Well, and the other thing is,
Which is not what they're trying to
No, it's
teach,
not.
but it's people.
But it's people.
are like
But
that.
I chose, right, to not have the priesthood.
Yeah.
I chose it. But there are individuals who don't have it because they've made mistakes or whatever,
Yeah.
and
Or they pretend to have it
or they pretend to have it.
because
But
they're not taking care of their mistakes.
Yeah.
but the thing is like, how does that make that person look? Like okay, I'm a dad that's done something that has made me get excommunicated.
Right.
My kid knows I'm excommunicated. They go to church, and then they hear about how important it is that there's a priesthood holder in the room.
Yeah.
Like, what does that do to that kid?
I don't know. That's not what this podcast
Yeah.
is about.
Yeah, the thing is,
But that's an
the
issue.
word is so much better now here.
That's good.
It was only
Yeah, I
Utah.
mean, we don't know what people think. We all assign what we think they're thinking. And
yeah.
that's so often not what they were thinking. And the great thing about the ward that we have here is that we're not that unique. There are a lot of families that are part member. Why is this coming off and on? There are a lot of families that are part member, and they know that, and they try to accommodate lessons to apply to all situations, and they're very accepting, like, whatever situation you're in, wherever you're at, you know, in your beliefs, in your spirituality or your behavior. We're just glad you're here.
Yeah, I appreciate that
Just
here too.
come and be part of us.
I've liked that lesson. They're very enforcing that it's not about all the choices you're making. It's not a checklist. It's about who you are as a person. And that's how God judges you.
Who you're becoming, who you're trying to become.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. They have had that more of a focus.
But even though the episode isn't about that, let me just say that people have got to be careful about what they're teaching, especially how diverse it is. This world is not a one-size-fits-all place.
Yeah.
And I think that in religion, we have a tendency to look at the world through a one-size-fits-all viewpoint. And it's really easy to do that until you experience more diversity in your life. And then it's like, wait a minute, this isn't...
Which they are coming out more. They actually had a talk about, you know, the church is trying to teach gospel ideals. Like, okay, this is how it would be in a perfect world, in a perfect scenario. This is how it would look. And that's the standard and what we teach, because that's what we're all aiming for. But in reality, nobody's there.
Yeah, and I felt like...
And that's okay. That's why, you know.
And I felt like back in Utah, they mostly only taught the ideal, and they didn't really accommodate and really, you know, point out that you're not going to be ideal all the time.
And it was almost like it was a contest.
Yeah, a contest
to try to make yourself look more ideal than the next person.
And that was really, and that caused a lot of judgment. And here it's very much, they really point out, now, are you going to be perfect all the time? Absolutely not.
Just be genuine.
Yeah.
That's good. What's your question? You had a question,
Oh, yes,
Naomi?
I had a question. So, when you're feeling that way at church, what do you do? Like, what is your inner
what
talk?
do you do when the going gets tough and the journey is rough? What'll you do?
At first, it was, I had to keep going through the process and keep going through the process. Now I have to start the process and then take a step back and be like, but what do I think? Not what do my parents think? What would my dad say? What would my mom say? It's what do I think?
Right.
Because, and this is going to sound really self-centered, but in the end, it's my life, and I should be focusing on what I think, not what everyone else does.
So what do you do? Like, how do you resolve feelings at church when you're thinking stuff and it's not what you think you're hearing? And maybe it's not what either parent is saying, or, you know, you're kind of feeling like you're alone in this. This is kind of what I think. How do you resolve that within yourself when you don't have somebody that's on the same page as you to go to and kind of talk it out?
That I deal with it with God. I pray about it, and sometimes I'll turn to the scriptures, but sometimes I'll talk to you guys about it.
Yeah.
See what you guys think, because sometimes you do need to build off of other people's opinion and hear what everyone else thinks. But
get both sides. So, Neil, what about you? What about when you have things that you hear that you're not sure what you think and what you...
in what context?
Like opinions that are...
Context.
That are like religious. Or I would say, okay, not religion, because it would be spiritual. It would be things that are right and wrong and moral and amoral. And when you're having like spiritual, not sure what I think or whatever, What source do you go to? Where do you
Well,
do?
spiritual, number one, I don't consider spiritual as like an area to question.
Well, what do you define as spiritual?
Afterlife, God, ghosts, that type of stuff. Those types of mysteries aren't very interesting or important to me. What is more important to me is what I consider to be right and wrong, treating other people the way that they deserve to be treated, and also, the universe, the state of our galaxy, and that's a big scale. What's right more on part of the government? What is scientifically sound? What things do I read about that we have done to each other as men, as man and woman, as a society that's right and wrong?
So what sources do you turn to? Do you have people you talk to? Do you just read mostly about it?
I guess I just believe what I believe. And I guess I talk to people about it sometimes, but to me, what's important is to do what I believe is right, and I need to come up with that moral set myself. And for me, doing something good without consideration of eternal reward or punishment for it means a lot. It's like, oh, I'm not doing this for God. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. Period.
Which is how it should be. Yeah.
Even with God.
Even with God. That should be. You do it because you think it's the right thing. Has it morphed?
Changed, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, my definition of right and wrong has changed.
Because I think I've seen some change even in just like the past 6 months.
For the better or for the worse?
Better.
Okay. Yeah, I have been on shaky ground as to what I felt is moral and not moral in the past, and it's becoming more solid the further I go along. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, to me, it's this great big mystery, an exciting unknown that I need to discover and experience that I don't know yet all the answers to.
Yeah.
So
ditto. Do you have anything to add to that idea?
I don't know. The unknown is scary sometimes for me.
The unknown is scary.
The unknown is extremely scary, but that's what's exciting.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have all the answers. You don't know how things are going to turn up.
Yeah, and I don't know all the answers.
Yeah, and sometimes we as humans want to take this very self-centered approach that it's all about us, and it's all about how we see the world, when in reality, there's a lot bigger forces to play than our puny little lives here on the earth.
Yeah.
So my question was going to be, it just left me again. What do you do when you disagree with one of us, like we're sharing an opinion or maybe even we're blowing off steam, like, I can't believe this person believes that. It's so ridiculous. What do you do when you just totally see it the other way?
I roll my eyes. Or are you talking about Ava?
Ava.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ava.
Oh, I wasn't going to say anything.
I can't hear you.
I wasn't going to say anything. I was just nodding.
No, what do you...
Well, no, I'm asking you.
When you see us,
me.
When Dad's talking and you disagree with what he's saying, or if I'm talking and you disagree with what I'm saying, as far as like standards, right and wrong, spiritual religion, whatever you want to call it.
I don't think I have the healthiest way of dealing with that. I don't really chime in and say what I believe. I just kind of I'm very much, I don't know. I feel like in the church, a lot of people are like, this is what everyone should believe. And they want everyone to believe what they believe because they think it's true and they think that that's what's beneficial. Yeah. But I believe that everyone has a right to believe what they believe. And I'm not one to try and change that. Unless I feel like I really should. But
yeah.
So like if you're saying something that you believe, I don't want to try and interfere.
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of be
you did say something back to Dad. I don't even remember what it was. I remember Maya going, "Oh,"
Yeah, that was
face at you like, "Oh."
If it's an
she
obvious
said something.
And sometimes I'm not sure what to call it, but it gets the better of me, and I'm just like, and it's just like an obvious comment to make,
Just like,
so I'll just say it.
No, that's stupid because of this.
Yeah, I was in a mood that day. So.
Yeah,
What was that about? I don't even remember.
I don't even remember.
You
what
were
it was about.
talking about how I think you were talking about Joseph Smith or something, and how he messed up, and I said, well, in theory, the church is perfect, the gospel is perfect, but people are not.
That was really funny, Maya. Oh,
She was like, she just like
she
had a
thought
moment.
she thought it was going to start some humongous fight or something.
Yeah, and that's what I like about Neil. He like
Yeah,
he's cool.
Dad's just chill.
That doesn't mean that I don't get mad.
Yeah, I'm sure you get mad, but you don't like
I just
pound
keep
me
it-
on it.
No, it's
Yeah.
not worth the fight. Our relationship is more important than who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
Even though I'm right.
Even though I'm always right.
I thought you were going to say you're right. That's our thing.
No, you're wrong. So
Oh, okay. There it is. So you mentioned in your essay that sometimes when we're telling you things, it's followed with "Don't tell."
Yeah, don't tell this
tell.
person that I said this.
How have you dealt with that? What do you do? Have you gotten that to stop?
It stopped mostly.
How did you do that? Because there are going to be other kids out there that are like, I'm caught in the middle and I really don't want to be. How do I stop that?
Sometimes if I don't think it's worth telling, like if it's just something stupid, I'm just like, okay, and I don't tell the other person because I don't think that it's going to benefit. If it's something big, I just tell the other person because I don't think, personally, I think in a marriage you shouldn't be going behind each other's back, and especially involving the kids and going behind each other's back.
Absolutely.
So it's very important to draw boundaries, and I've had to talk to you guys before and say, you can't do that.
yeah,
Don't involve me.
don't involve me.
Because as much as I like helping my parents and as much as I like being there for you in any way I can, there are boundaries, and sometimes I need to take
And
a
it's
step
not
back.
your problem.
It's not my
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, you shouldn't be caught in the middle. I had to do that with my parents once. I would get both of them complaining to me on different sides of the argument, and I used to try to help them, like talk them through it. And we were listening to parenting tapes. I don't know if you remember.
Oh yeah, James Jones.
And it was talking about codependent relationships and being stuck in a situation like that, and that the easiest, fastest way to have that stop is to break the confidence. Whatever that person told you not to say to that person, you call right back up and say, so-and-so said this, and then you hang up, and they
Force
learn,
them to deal with their problems.
yeah, then they realize really fast you're not going to be stuck in the middle of it. If they tell you something, you're going to be telling that person they have to deal with it their own way. So I have appreciated that boundary. Actually, it's helped in Neil and my marriage and in yours
Yeah.
in my relationship.
Yeah.
Started acting more like an adult. How rude.
How rude. It's been about a half hour. I'm pooped.
Yeah.
Do you have anything more?
Maybe we'll talk to some of our other kids.
That's kinda
out
what I
a
was
little
thinking.
bit tomorrow.
Do you have anything more?
I don't think so.
Come on, you've got to have tidbits of wisdom and knowledge for other kids.
Make sure that you keep the lines of communication open. Because there are some things that you may not want to talk about that are very scary to talk about and seem very taboo, and you're scared of what the other person would think. But if you're not talking about it, then you're not solving it. And it kind of closes off things in relationship. So if you want to keep a very healthy relationship, I think the main thing to do is just keep communicating your needs and figuring out their needs and accommodating for that and finding balance in everything.
Yeah. And Neil, you said something I have definitely lived by, and you've helped me realize, is the relationship with that person is way more important than any of these issues. Like, just keeping that relationship, which is how when you have a talk that's open and honest like that, instead of having a knee-jerk gut reaction, you go, okay, relationship.
Yeah, and you have to consider the other person too, and kind of remember it's not just about you in the relationship.
Yeah. Don't just defend yourself.
Don't just defend yourself.
Oh, you're so wise.
So
Okay.
Okay.
That's it for now.